Welcome to Dukascopy TV with me, Alex Isat. The Bureau of Economic Analysis released its second estimate of real gross domestic product for the second quarter of 2014, covering April, May and June of this year. The release showed output in the US increasing at an annual rate of 4.2%. This is relative to the first quarter, when real GDP declined 2.1%. The revision is up marginally from BAA's 4% advance estimate released last month. To discuss the figures is market analyst Craig Erlam of Alpari. Craig, investment in structures is being cited as the main factor for GDP to be higher than expected. Do you agree? And what else could be behind this rise?
Well, that certainly appears to be the case, but I think we've got to remember that this is only a marginal revision on an annualised basis. 0.2% increase is nothing really to write home about. I think the most important thing that we have here is that we've seen that bounce back from the first quarter. We've seen strong investment both from businesses and also from households. So the thing that appears to me to be the most important thing here is not necessarily the increase itself, because it is only marginal, but the fact that what is driving the bounce back from that poor first quarter is the building blocks for a sustainable recovery.
The stats also showed that consumer spending remains unchanged while exports rose. What does this mean for the future?
Well, I think the fact that exports rose is a real key point. Consumer spending was always unlikely to really increase too rapidly, simply because the main problem that we've had recently in the US is the fact that real incomes aren't rising. If real incomes aren't rising at the same time as when consumer spending is, then that immediately tells me that this is unsustainable. So it wasn't really a huge surprise that consumer spending didn't rise, but the fact that we're seeing an improvement in exports, I think this is going to be seen as a really real pleasing aspect to the markets, because this is the one area of the economic recovery which can be sustainable and, on top of things, can be improved. And once we start to see the improvement there, you'd expect to see the rise in real incomes, which can then drive a rise in consumer spending. So I think that's a more pleasing aspect than it would have been if it was the other way around. If we'd seen falling exports and a rise in consumer spending, I think people would be more concerned than delighted.
Does the US economy look bright?
I think it does. I think people have doubted it quite a lot this year, and I think that was always the wrong thing to do, because in the first quarter I think there was an overreaction to those poor figures, and given that they were largely distorted by poor weather in the US, I didn't really think there was too much we could read into it. Now, at the same time, I think we can also say the same thing about the second quarter, and what we've really got to do is average out the two to get a more real idea of how the economy is performing. But I think the fact, like I say, the fact that we're seeing an improvement in business spending, the fact that we're seeing unemployment coming down, the fact that we're seeing consumer spending maintained at a high level while not getting too ahead of itself, I think all of these factors tell me that this recovery is strong. It tells me that the recovery is sustainable, and it tells me that I think we should see it continue to pick up in the third and fourth quarters, and then again into next year.
Thank you for your time, Craig. Make sure you keep watching Dukascopy TV for news on the economy. Goodbye.